What's up everybody? We are back. In the last video, we finished up our chat screen and it's looking great. In this video, we're going to jump into the profile screen. So this is going to be the current user's profile. So not another user, but the current user. And we're going to start with just this top section here, which is actually relatively simple. It's just a circle. But the data for this has to come from the user profile. So if you remember in onboarding, we have a color selection. And then depending on what color the user selects, we're going to just make that the color of this circle. But we want to save that data somewhere. So when the user selects a color, we could save it in user defaults or something like that. But we got to remember when we start to think about the app experience, we're going to want to save the user's data to the remote database. This way, if they log in on another device, we can still load that color. So we're not going to want to save it in something like user defaults, which is just on the current device. Instead, we want to save it to the backend. And every time we're saving something to our database and then fetching it from the database, we're going to use some sort of data model. Just like in the past, we created an avatar model and we created a chat model. We also want to create a user model for our user. In our services section, let's go ahead and create a folder called user. And this will be any service relating to fetching a user, saving a user profile. That would go in this user folder. Let's create another folder called models, just like we did with our other services. Then in here, I'm going to create a new empty file and call this the user model. Let's import the foundation framework and create a struct called user model. And go ahead and open the brackets. Every user is going to have an ID. We'll call it the user ID of type string. And when we create the user profile in the database in Firestore, I also want to track the date that we created their profile, just so that we have a record of how long they've been in our system. So let's do date created, be of type date. We'll make it optional just because it's not super important. It's okay if we don't have one. We'll put a Boolean in here for did complete onboarding of type bool. And we'll make it optional in case we don't have any value. And we'll also do a profile color. So we'll say let, and we'll say profile color of type color. Now let's talk about this real quick. Did complete onboarding. So after the user finishes the onboarding flow, we're going to set a value, obviously, to true for the user did complete. Why are we doing this? This is not something that we need to do, but you could imagine maybe your user has multiple devices or they change their phone and then they get a new phone and they go and they sign in on the new phone. When they sign in on that phone, we want to check whether or not they already completed onboarding, because if we don't have a Boolean for that, or if we only saved it in user defaults on the current phone, then when they sign in on a new phone, we're not going to know if they did, and we're going to have to push them through the onboarding flow. And obviously that's a really bad user experience to go through the onboarding flow twice. One, because it sucks to have to click through the experience, but also because the user probably would get upset thinking that their data is going to get overwritten or something like that. So I really like to save a value for whether or not the user has completed onboarding. And then in our onboarding flow, the user is also going to select a color. Now, if you remember the onboarding color view here, the user is clicking on one of these colors and it is of type color. But now we're looking at the user model and we also have this as type color. I'm bringing this up because type color is a Swift UI type. This is not something that's going to be supported in a remote database. So when we go and actually save the color to the database, we're not going to save it as a color. We're going to save it as some format that is reusable across the internet. So we could do like the numbers for the RGB, or I like to do just the hex string. So if every color has a hex value, and so I'll just save it as a string. So this is going to be the profile color. We'll call it the profile color hex, and we'll make it of type string. Let's go ahead and create an init here, custom init, triple click, Control M, and we'll just give these some default values of nil, just in case we don't have them. And lastly, let's go ahead and create our mocks. Just like we did with the chat model, we're going to create mocks in our user model. And this will be the user model. And actually, it's annoying that we keep copying this and changing these words. We should actually just make these self, referencing the type that it's in. And this way we can just copy that code every time. I'll do it in the avatar model too. This will just be self. So this way we can now just copy and paste and not have to change that every time. And then for the mocks here, we want to create the array. Again, I'm just going to copy our user model. I'm going to open up ChatGPT and I'm going to say create 4 more mocks for this. And it's going to go ahead and do its thing. Just copy the bottom section of this, these mocks, and jump back into our code, paste it in here. And then I'll leave this here for those of you who are manually doing this. Let's highlight this, Control I to fix the formatting. And that looks pretty good. We have 4 users, and this one was created 1 day ago. This one was created 3 days and 2 hours ago, 5 days, 4 hours ago. I like it. Wow, ChatGPT even knew that this was going to be a hex string. I love it. That's awesome. All right, go ahead and copy that if you need it. And then let's jump into the code. So we have this screen to build. Let's Option Shift O, open up the profile view, close the navigator, and let's get coding. You already see the formatting here, which looks just like our default list formatting, which I really like, and we're using all over this app. So let's go ahead and start by making this a list. In this section here, I can see that there's a section title, my avatars. I'm going to make this a section, and then I'm going to make the bottom a section. Let's go ahead and with our top section, we're going to just create a section. And it doesn't look like there's any header for this section. So we'll just use the default without a header. I'm going to put a Z stack on the screen, and inside the Z stack, let's add a circle. And let's give it a fill. And I want to fill it with the user profile color. So we're going to have to load up a user on this screen. So let's create here, up here, we'll call this the user, or maybe the current user of type user model. Set it equal to .mock for now. Let's fill this with the current user dot, and we want to get the color from the user model. So again, we have the hex string, but we need to convert this now into a color. So let's go back to ChatGPT and let's say here, can you create an extension of color to initialize from this hex string? And then I'll just give it an example. Color, I'll do hex, and then close the brackets. Also create an extension to convert to hex. So let's see if it will create from hex and to hex. And this is great that ChatGPT can do this kind of stuff. Otherwise, we would have to go on Stack Overflow or something, because there's no way that I would be able to figure out what this is actually doing. This looks good. Let's see. Color, initialize from hex, and then go to hex. Let's copy this code. It's an extension of color. So let's jump into our code base here and then open our extensions folder. Where's our extensions folder? Extensions. Let's right click, empty file. Let's do color plus ext. Paste in the result from ChatGPT. And I will also attach this file itself to this video. So if you're not using ChatGPT, you can just copy and paste the code from that file. Now we should be able to initialize the color from a hex string. That was so simple, and to hex makes it optional. That's fine, we'll leave it as is. Let's go back to the profile view. Or sorry, actually now let's go into our user model and let's create a calculated variable to convert this to the actual color. So we'll say here, we'll call this var profile color calculated, and then we'll make this of type color. We'll open the brackets. I'm using the word calculated here to be explicit because I don't have to, right? The profile color keys are not taken. We could just do that. But I like to use the word calculated so that I know later on that this value is being created inside the data model and it's not coming from the backend. If I just left this as profile color, for me at least, I wouldn't know if this profile color is coming directly from the backend or not. Like it could just be part of, let profile color. And maybe it did come from the backend. but by adding the word calculated here, it's just a personal thing so that I know that this is not something that's actually directly saved in the database. It doesn't know what color is, so let's import SwiftUI, and then let's go ahead and let's say in here guard let profile color hex, else return. Let's return the accent color as the default color in case we don't have one. And then let's return here the color, and we should have from the hex, which is from our new extension, and let's pass in the profile color hex. Back on the profile view, we should be able to now call fill with the current user dot profile color calculated, and we'll do otherwise dot accent. In case the current user is not loaded for whatever reason, we'll just default to accent here as well. And it looks like SwiftLint does not like the naming convention from the extension. Identifier name A should be between 3 and 40 characters. All right, so let's just fix this quick. A stands for alpha. Let's go alpha, 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 alpha. R is red, 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 red. And then let's do green here as well. Green, these are just RGBs. I could have asked ChatGPT to fix this, but I think it's faster for us to just go ahead and do this ourselves. Down here, we have red, we have green, we have blue, and we have alpha. Red, green, blue, alpha. Okay. Try to build it. Okay, so R stands for red, A is alpha, almost done, green and blue. Sweet. All right, let's jump back to our profile view, reload the canvas. Should be working now. Looking good, looking good. Great job, guys. You guys are doing great. And that, I guess, is our color. Why is this our color? Where is this color coming from? Our mock data. Oh, we have our mock user here. I don't like that color is so similar to my accent color. Let's just change this to, maybe we'll just put this color here and then this color on the second one. Maybe this is a different color now. Yeah, all right, cool, blue. Let's go ahead and make this a dot frame with a width of 100 and a height of 100. And let's give this whole thing another frame with a max width of infinity so that it pushes right in the center of that infinity frame. Lastly, let's remove the list row formatting because we don't want that white background. So luckily we have our remove list row formatting modifier. It's an incredibly simple section with really not much data, but the point that I was trying to get through with this is a user goes through onboarding, they make a selection for their profile. Maybe in your app, they're going to give you their name. Maybe they're going to upload an image. Maybe it's a dating app and they upload 5 images. The logic is very similar. They're going to go through the app, you're going to save their name, and then you're going to pull their name from the user profile. Let's go ahead and move this down to a calculated variable. Let's cut it. Down here, let's do a private variable. Let's call this the myInfo section of type SomeView. Paste that in. Put the myInfo section on the screen. Let's highlight this, Control I to fix the formatting. And then we're going to do one more section here. This section, we do want to have the header. So let's look for the header completion. In the header, let's put text that says my avatars. So these will be the avatars the user creates themselves. Let's hold the control button and click on this, and then let's wrap it, embed it into an H stack. Let's give it spacing of 0. Maybe we put a spacer in the middle here, and then on the right side we're going to add a image with system name. And let's go plus.circle.fill. Let's give this a font of title to make it bigger. And then I will cast this as any button, and we'll use our default button. Let's also give this a foreground style of accent color so that it really pops out there, and that should be good. This button will open up a screen to create an avatar, which we obviously haven't created yet, But let's put in the logic just to pop open that sheet real quick. And so let's copy this show settings view and let's create a here. Let's call this show create avatar view of type bool equals false. When we click this button, let's set that equal to true. Now, as I was talking about earlier in this course, this action is our business logic, whereas this is our view logic. So I want to separate out the business logic from the view logic. An easy way to think about this is that this action is going to happen when the user clicks it. This is going to run when the view loads. So two different points in time, a great place to separate this into two different functions. So I'm going to cut this and let's come down here and let's just make a function, private func on new avatar button pressed, and set that there on new avatar button pressed. And then just like with this sheet, let's add a full screen cover and we'll bind to the show create avatar view. And then we don't have that screen, so let's just put text. Let's just put text here that says create avatar. All right, if I click the settings quick, it breaks because the environment object is not there. In our settings view, we have an app state. Let's go ahead and copy this and put our app state on the profile view as well. If I click the settings, it should pop up a sheet. And if I click the create avatar, it pops up as well. All right, let's move up to my avatars section here. So we have the header, but we don't have the actual content yet. Of course, we're going to need an array of avatars to loop on here. So at the top, let's create an at state, and we'll call these my avatars, which will be an array of avatar model. We'll set it equal to avatar model.mocks. So then in our list here, we can go for each my avatars, see if that renders. As avatar model, I think we made those hashable. So id \self. And then let's reuse the cell that we created for the popular row. So this cell here, we had an image, a title, and a subtitle. And now we're just going to have an image and a title, and we're just not going to put the message here. So I think we called that the custom list cell view. Triple click, Control M. Let's go avatar.profileImageName, avatar.name, subtitle will be nil. Just like all the other cells, let's remove the list row formatting. Just like that, our screen has come together. Let's make this .anyButton with the highlight option as well. Looking good. And then I also want the ability to swipe to delete these. Just an easy way for the user to delete their own avatars. So we can do that by on the for each, we'll add a .onDelete method here. And I will click enter. This will be the index set. And then let's create a function just like we did with on new avatar pressed to handle onDelete. So the onDelete is going to take an index set. Let's create a function down here. Private func onDelete avatar. Pass in the index set of type index set. Open the brackets. Let's do the logic real quick. We'll do guard let index equals the index set dot first, else return. So let's make sure that we do have at least one index in this set. It's giving us a set in case we selected multiple and swiped to delete multiple at the same time. This UI only allows one, so that's why I'm only going for the first. And then let's just remove from my avatars array. Let's remove at the index. Up here, we will then call delete onDelete avatar, pass in the index set. Let's see if it works. Beautiful. Let's wrap up this screen. I'm going to take this section here and let's cut it and move it down to the bottom, or move it down below my info. We'll do private var. Let's call this my avatars section, some view. Paste that here. My avatars will go up here, keeping the body nice and clean and readable. And then lastly, on the my settings button, let's go ahead and just use our new modifier here. So where we have a any button where we use the default and we put on settings pressed here. And it reverts to primary. Let's just give this a foreground style of accent. Cool. These buttons are clickable. They are swipe to deletable. We can move to our create avatar screen, and our app is really starting to come together. The very last thing that we're going to do here is these avatars, chances are we're going to have to load them in, which is an asynchronous process. So you could imagine if my avatars are not loaded yet, what would this look like? It would look something like this. So let's go down to the avatar section, and then let's just say here, we'll say if my avatars is empty, if there are none, else. So the else will be our data, but if there are none, we'll just put a text here that says click plus to create an avatar. And let's give this padding of 50. Let's give it a frame with a max width of infinity. Push it right in the middle. We'll give it a font of body, so it's the normal font, not too big, and a foreground style of .secondary. I also want to remove the list row background, so it kind of is just like that. Beautiful. Let's simulate the loading of this real quick. So what we're going to do here is create a task. When this screen appears, we're going to have a function that says private func load data. And we'll make it asynchronous because tasks allow that. So we'll await load data. Obviously, we're going to do a lot of loading data when we get to the actual data section of this course. But for right now, let's just do a fake try await task dot sleep for .seconds. Let's do 5 seconds. After we load the data, let's up here, let's create a boolean for is loading of type bool. Set it equal to false. Or actually, we'll start it as true at the very beginning, and then we'll set is loading equal to false. And here maybe we take the array and we will say, and we'll set my avatars equal to avatar model dot model. All right, lastly, let's put in a little loading indicator. Within the empty closure, let's say if is loading else, and let's go ahead and make a group so that we can keep these modifiers on both of them. If it is else, we'll put that. If it is loading, let's put a progress view. So just a little spinner, 5 seconds, this will load in. And then if it does load, we should get our cells on the screen. And then just to do the opposite, let's make this a blank array. So if it doesn't load, we should get the other UI. Great. When we actually go and make the data, we're going to update our previews so that we have both of these instances and we don't have to change it right here. But for this point in the course, I think this looks good. And let's just keep moving forward for now. Let's go ahead and wrap up this video with Option Command C. Let's commit this. We'll call this a feature and say profile model as well as profile view. Sorry, user model. Let's stage all, let's commit it, let's push it up to GitHub, and I will see you all in the next video.